We're ready to go? Okay, perfect. All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our second Interfaith dialogue of the semester. Today we're going to be talking about faith across space and some experiences over some different physical places and spaces. So I hope you are all very excited. The first question for the panelists is, I'm Rachel, I'm your moderator, by the way. The first question for the panelists is just introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit about your faith tradition and some of the places that you've practiced your faith over your lifetime. And whoever would like to start is more than
I'm Rabbi Slossberg. I'm a local rabbi. I'm probably the only clergy person you will meet that's only had one job and one job interview. But then her 40 gee, I mean, I've been Israel 36 times. The state of Israel, I visited churches, and I have prayed at different synagogues. And pray every day, and although now the places I'm practicing that is very strange is virtually. That's quite an adjustment, but it goes where I go, and later on with some of the other questions, I'll tell some of them that have places that have impacted me spiritually, not just Jewishly, but I also feel a tremendous spiritual connection. I've been to Vatican, I've been to two popes, and so I've had a lot of interesting experiences in places that are really, really special, and even though they may not be mine, I still feel a spiritual presence.
Thank you.
My name is Matt Huss, and I serve as a bishop for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Obviously, I practice my religion every day. Our religious beliefs center on Jesus Christ, Israel as our Savior and Redeemer. I have personally lived in Venezuela, the Caracas area, as a missionary, and also on Aruba for a couple of years. And so I've even been to Utah. I'm sure questions about Utah, I can answer that as well. But practicing my religion in those different spaces has impacted my life a lot. It kind of gives me a different perspective on us as children of God and our capacity to feel His love no matter where we are.
Michael.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thanks to your office for the great work that you have consistently been doing over the past few years that I have sometimes been the beneficiary of. And also I want to recognize those students who are here today, because from what I understand, you don't need to be here today. So that is an expression of your heart and mind, your open-mindedness, and also your passion about the well-being of the world and the community that we live in. You could be doing anything at this time, so you're here. My name is Iraj Rahmani. I was born in Iran, Persia. And when I was in teenage years, I left. As far as where the places I practiced my faith, obviously my parents were Baha'is. And so that had a lot to do with their guidance and teaching for me to later on choose Baha'i faith for myself. But I have practiced the faith. I lived in Pakistan for some time. I lived in Austria for some time. And for most of my life, I have been in United States, Louisville, but of course traveling around in various places, England and Australia. I have immediate families there. As far as a little bit about Baha'i faith, I can read you a statement from Baha'i writings that really, in a way, summarizes what is these Baha'is are all about. And that is that we believe that the fundamental principle enunciated by Baha'u'llah, who is the prophet founder of Baha'i faith, the fundamental principle enunciated by Baha'u'llah, the followers of his faith firmly believe, is that the religious truth is not absolute but relative. That divine revelation is a continuous and progressive process. That all the great religions of the world are divine in origin. That their basic principles are in complete harmony. That their aims and purposes are one and the same. That their teachings are but facets of one truth. That their functions are complementary. That they differ only in non-essential aspects of their doctrines, and that their missions represent successive stages in the spiritual evolution of human society. And I give back to our lovely moderator.
Those were amazing answers. It sounds like you all have some great intercultural experiences that I'm excited to hear you share some more about. So our next question is, how does your faith practice look different in different countries or on different land? You can discuss generally or include your own experiences with travel and migration. And again, whoever wants to
I guess I'll start since I'm on the end here. There's a tremendous impact on culture, on religion. And so, I visited Catholic churches that are mostly Hispanic speaking. I've visited Vietnamese Catholic churches, very, very different. So it's the same in Judaism. There are two primary streams of dialect. One is Sephardic, which is Jews of Eastern Europe, Jews of Iberian Peninsula, Spain, and Middle Eastern descent, and people who grew up in those countries, and then Jews of Eastern European descent, which is the largest group in the United States, has their own customs are slightly different. So we read from the sacred scroll called the Torah, the Bible of Moses, and ours is open flat on a table. The Sephardic is read. It is vertical. So one is horizontal, one is vertical. The language sounds a little different. The incredible thing is I can go anywhere in the world and know where we are in the service and feel a connection. So the prayers are similar, with some slight changes, maybe 15-20% differences, but culture impacts it. In the United States, it's very, very different. You can go to a synagogue where someone's playing a guitar, there's music. Park Avenue Synagogue has a 50-string group, that performs on the high holidays, and that feels different than, let's say, my synagogue, which is, a medium-sized synagogue. And all that, and then I think the buildings and customs kind of just feed off of each other. In Israel, for example, there are local synagogues. Almost every neighborhood has one or two synagogues, and they may feel they're very small. Some of them, there are some of them in bomb shelters. So it's a very different feel. But whenever I'm there, I feel at home. Whether it's a left-wing expression of Judaism or a far right-wing expression of Judaism, it feels home, it feels familiar. It may not be what I would necessarily want, but it's still home. So And that's one of the beautiful things about visiting synagogues in different parts of the world is that the prayers are, for the most part, the same. And that's really reassuring. The dialect may be different, the accent may be different. Hearing Hebrew and Italian with people who are most comfortable with Italian is different. But there are people in synagogues in China, in Japan. These are very different experiences, I think, touch our souls.
Very similar to Rabbi Slossberg, our church, we operate in about 160 countries right now, and so the idea is that if you were to worship here on Sunday and then fly to Thailand or Russia next Sunday, the only difference might be the language or the climate of the area, but the essential part of our religious practice is the same. And so a lot of effort has been made over the past few decades to bring the global nature of our church to the forefront of that. And even in my own congregation, we have people from different countries worshiping together. We read some from the same scriptures. Our congregations are organized the exact same way. My first Sunday worship as a missionary in Caracas, the only thing I didn't understand was the language. I had no idea what anyone was saying, but even the hymn books were like the same color, and the music was the same, even though I couldn't understand what they were saying. There was a bishop, there were it was the same, it was uniform. But the practice of our religion leaves plenty of room for local and national culture to be expressed in different holidays, maybe, or different customs that they might have in the country that is expressed. And what has always been fascinating to me is that our religion becomes a culture unto itself that we share no matter where we might be in the world. So that is an incredibly unifying experience for people.
That's amazing. I think they shared what I was going to share. And it goes back to the statement that the basic principles of all the faiths of God are the same, and they are in complete harmony. There are two concepts that perhaps I would verbalize it differently, just because of my English problem, is that in Baha'i faith there are two concepts. One is oneness of humanity. It's very much emphasized. We are all children of one God. We may be wearing glasses, we may be tall and short, black or white, and have different tones, but we are all children of one Creator. This oneness, which is a fact of creation, we are attempting and trying to manifest it in the human reality. Hence, we approach and try to get to unity. Perhaps in my understanding, my limited understanding, is that unity would be the manifestation of that oneness. The kingdom of God shall be established on earth as it is in heaven. Now, mindful of the oneness, there is another concept that is really a watchword, is unity in diversity. Oneness and unity does not mean sameness. And in Baha'i writings, it's mentioned that in all members of human family, children of one heavenly Father, humanity may be likened unto a garden with various colors of flowers. There is unity in diversity. Each difference enhances the beauty of the others. And perchance, another way of saying it is that this variation that we see, that seemingly may become perceived as confusing, is really the manifestation of that perfection, because perfection has infinite manifestations. Look at all the shades of color that exist in the sunlight. And we only see a little bit of it. Most of it we don't see. I think bees can see a lot more. Having said that, the fundamental principles are the same for Baha'is wherever they are practicing these spiritual values. But they are to embrace and celebrate that culture and that tradition and that custom of where they are. And I'll give you a couple of tangible examples. One is, let's say, Baha'i weddings that various kinds are attended. If you go to a Pakistani Baha'i wedding, you think you've gone to a Pakistani wedding. You wouldn't know it's a Baha'i wedding. If you go to American Baha'i wedding, you think you've gone to a normal wedding as you see it. You wouldn't know that, oh my God, these guys are Baha'is. What the Baha'i faith requires for the wedding that needs to be adhered to is that for the couple who are to be wed to recite a verse, we will all verily abide by the will of God. And for the couple, they need to have the consent of both sides' parents. Other than that, it's up to them. You do it the way your heart and mind desires. Why? Because that is how God has inspired you. Be unique. And that's one of the attributes of God. Another example, perchance, can be music. You go to an Indian or Pakistani or Austrian Baha'i devotional prayer gathering. The music is Austrian music. You hear a lot of classical music. It's like, you know, and same with here, same with Asia. But the words are the spiritual words. The words are similar, as they mentioned. The prayers are similar, but they add their own flavor to it. So that goes to emphasize and celebrate, even the word that is used, this diversity of human family. And it was a perfect scenario, what we described. To me, it sounded all the same, but we said it differently. And that shows the oneness of all these faiths of God, the source of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm always blown away by how well our panelists' answers fit into each other, even though they come from such different traditions. Yeah.
She prepares us well.
So this kind of gets into our next question about how does your faith practice national holidays, or do you have a nation-based identity within your faith? And how does this look outside of the nation where your faith is based?
What do you mean by national holidays, like of the United States?
Yeah, for national holidays of the country that you might practice.
No, we live in a country and we are part of the country. My heart is got two parts. It's got I am very proud of being American Jew. I also feel a very strong identification with the state of Israel, which is my spiritual homeland. So I observe all the holidays, national holidays in the United States. We close for all of them. And Martin Luther King Day, we close. We also observe and have some sort of practice related to holidays that are unique to the state of Israel. Israeli Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut, we observe. Yom HaZikaron, the Memorial Day for the fallen soldiers. Now in Israel, everything stops. There's like a siren that goes off for 1 minute, everyone bows their head. There's silence. In the United States, we have a slightly, we make some liturgical modifications to mark that event. And then Jews throughout the world remember, we have a lot, and these are modern holidays, of course, as is the state of Israel. And then for Holocaust Remembrance Day, there is always some sort of observance. So there is an interplay between individual and where they're living, and then Israel and the individual. So Jews throughout the world always pray facing Jerusalem, always, wherever you are. At the same time, I remember when visiting a synagogue in Moscow. It was very interesting. There was a unique prayer for the government. And Jews throughout the world have a prayer in their morning, in their Sabbath liturgy. National, and then to the
very similar in my case as well. We are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's a religious culture. I'm not aware of any national someone to contradict any of our teachings or any of our religious practice. So we celebrate the 4th of July here, but somebody in Cambodia is a member of the church, probably doesn't even care what the 4th of July is. It's not a thing. And when I was in Venezuela, Thanksgiving was super sad because they don't do Thanksgiving there, but I would just sit around like, oh man, I wonder what they're eating. But in Venezuela, Christmas Eve is the big, that's for what we would be Christmas Day here. It's the baby Jesus brings gifts on Christmas Eve. That's their culture. And so the observance of those holidays, it is impacted by your national culture, but nothing that, for example, even here, there's not going to be any alcohol in my 4th of July party. It's just not, that would be contrary to my religious beliefs, but that doesn't stop me from observing it overall. And I think that's how the interplay between religious faith and national identity and culture, that's how they do that.
The dear Rabbi and the Bishop are helping me. I've been in Baha'i most of my life. They are helping me to understand this sentence that says, the teachings of these divine faiths are but facets of one truth. Because I could have said the exact same thing that they shared. And it's like, I'm getting a little bit goosebumps, you can see it. The element of unity in diversity demands for us to celebrate where we are. If a Baha'i goes to another part of the world to share the teachings and principles of Baha'u'llah, they are not going there to change them. They are going there to embrace their culture, to learn from that beauty, to understand the gifts that God has invested with them in a new way, to have a fuller appreciation of the oneness and the truth and the perfection of the Lord. So I would say the exact same thing.
Wow. Thank you. Our next question is, are there specific places that are considered a holy land or a significant spiritual place that is universally agreed upon in your faith tradition?
Well, I would say Israel. Jerusalem in particular has been the center of Jewish aspirations, religious and national, for 4,000 years, since the time of Abraham. And for me, the old city of Jerusalem is a magical place. It enables me to experience Christianity. There's 4 quarters. So there's the Christian quarter, the Jewish quarter, the Muslim quarter, and the Armenian quarter. And all of them reflect history. They reflect pain. They were, in some ways, they reflect heartache. But they reflect reality. People don't always get along, right? The sense of the spiritual connection there is very, very important. So just being there, just praying by the Western Wall, which is a retaining wall of the Temple Mount, where the ancient temple was built. I mean, it connects me to my history and my past, which is very, very important. And again, as I said earlier, we pray for Jerusalem. And there are some who pray about the one day return to Zion, to the spiritual homeland. And truth matter is, the largest Jewish community in the world now is Israel, and is continuing to grow.
I think in our faith, the most sacred place would be our temples. We have almost 200 temples, which are sacred buildings where members perform ordinances and learn about Jesus Christ, and those temples are the most sacred holy sites of my faith. And it would be so for, we have a temple here, it's the same level of sacred holiness as the temple in Moscow or in Caracas in Venezuela, and that is the expression of our connection with God. So that is, and I personally would consider Jerusalem to be an extremely sacred and holy place for my own faith, and for the similar reasons, the temple there and all the things that happened there, and how much of my faith tradition was rooted in that.
I want to give you a pop quiz. Guess what I'm going to say? Guess what? Where is Holy Land for Baha'is? Don't be shy, just say it. Where?
Jerusalem.
Israel.
Haifa.
The Baha'i holy place is the point of adoration, so to speak. The term point of adoration is used because there is a prayer that every Baha'i is obligated to recite every day. And one of the, if you would, rituals that goes along with reciting that prayer is to face Holy Land. And I have not been as lucky as the rabbi to visit Holy Land 36 times. I have visited it 3 times. And the first time that I went, I did go to Jerusalem. And I was about 20 years old. And I was on the top of these stairs in Jerusalem, where there was the Wailing Wall, the temple, there was, and then the mosque. There were, in different areas of this complex, there were 3 lines, 3 long lines. One line were Jews, were going to say their prayers. One line were Muslims who were going to the mosque. There was another line of Christians who were going, looking at the place where Abraham sacrificed Ishmael and all that. And as a 20-year-old, and believe me, I was book smart, but socially I was 12. Okay, I'm being honest. I was overwhelmed with my experiences. I was 17 when my father passed away. At 18, I had to escape Iran, like the dynamic of the beloved Jews that happened in World War II time. So everything else died for me. I never knew if I ever look at my mother again. The dirt of the street, that little bitty ball that I used to play on the street, it all vanished for me, erased. Never knew if I see it. Then I was in Pakistan, living in a gym bag, not knowing the language, trying to survive to make it to America because I had a sister here already. So I was going through, and then I ended up in Austria, which was an insane culture shock. Going from a Middle Eastern country to Austria, believe me, you get culture shock. You from the United States, if you go to Austria, you'll have a culture shock, let alone the place I was going to, I left. And now I'm standing in Jerusalem on the top of this, and I was in awe that over thousands of years, God Almighty has told all its children and has designed it, that this is your holy place. love each other, be together, be seeker of light, not the lamp. It's okay if the name and the terminologies are different. I have met these two souls for the first time right now. I mean, I haven't met them completely because they're very shielded. However, I feel a connection with them. It's like, if I see them next time or when they're leaving, I want to embrace them. It's not okay to say it was nice to meet you, see you later. And this is the magnificence of what God has done, and yet, unfortunately, people get attached to the differences and not seek the essence of it, which is love and unity.
That is so powerful. I feel like that's like a mic drop moment. Wow. That leads us really well into our next question, which is, if you're comfortable speaking to this and have experience with it, what is it like living in a place where your holidays, dietary practices, lifestyle, or other things are accepted and commonplace versus ones where they maybe are not?
It's a very different experience. Living in Louisville, Kentucky, where a minority of minority is very different than living in Jerusalem, where I can walk around, I can find kosher food, kosher restaurants all over the place, and I speak Hebrew, so it's probably the place where I feel the freest practice my religion. Whereas in Louisville, I feel I am a minority. There are no kosher restaurants. There are restaurants where I can eat vegetarian, but it is much, the infrastructure is not as strong here as it is, let's say, in Jerusalem. Where, on the Sabbath, you see tremendous decline in the number of cars that are being driven. It's just a different deal. At the same time, I'm proud to be a Louisvillian, I'm proud to be an American Jew, and I haven't been pulled enough that I want to, move to Israel, to emigrate to Israel. I have my children and grandchildren, so I'm not going anywhere. But the place where I feel most comfortable and the least self-conscious is in Jerusalem. Even in the old city, when I'm surrounded by Muslims, Christians, and Jews, it just feels, I don't know, it just feels natural. One thing I want to point out with the old city is, within 1 mile, you've got central shrines of Christians, Jews, and Muslims, all within 1 mile. I mean, it's like brings everyone together. It's really what the world should be, like people coexisting, and even though there's coexistence, I mean, the negotiations over who takes care of the buildings is very interesting. I have to tell you one great story, just to give you an idea of the complexity of everyone living together. I was invited to a meeting in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where many believe that some denominations believe that Jesus is buried, and each of the different types of Christianity have their little niches in the building. There was a leak in the roof, and who has the honor of repairing? Because each niche has a part of the roof, and this went on for over 10 years. So finally, Teddy Powell was there. Said, "You're going to ruin this very important historical cycle. We're not being able to." For years when I visited, there were tarps over these sacred little shrines within the building. Finally, Teddy Powell came up with the ingenious idea. We'll have not a Christian, Catholic, no denomination as Christian, repair it. We'll hire a Jewish firm in Canada. So the firm is hired, and then they decide to dedicate the building. The roof is put up, were prepared. And it took a year to figure out where everyone was going to sit, all the different, and this is so typical of all religious groups. So would you have them in a circle? Would you have them, when it took a year to prepare this event, marking this beautiful restoration of the roof. So that kind of just shows how we're all so complex, and yet at the same time, Jerusalem to me is really the city of love, and where people can be themselves, and there should always be mutual respect of the sacred places of different people. So whenever I go to Israel, never do I miss visiting the Baha'i shrine, most beautiful gardens I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I've been there 36 times. Always Church of Holy Sepulchre. I visit the Garden of Gethsemane, and these sacred places are also part of who I am too. And of course, the Dome of the Rock and the Mosque of Omar. You know, I visit when I'm allowed to. I mean, most of the time, I don't have access. But again, the mutual respect is so important for treasuring the treasures of others.
Very similar, Rabbi. Although in my religious tradition, we don't feel as pronounced distinction between the larger community because of dietary things or issues like that. But we are definitely a religious minority pretty much wherever we go, unless it's, well, even in Salt Lake now, it's maybe 50-50. But the idea really of our religion is that of gathering. And so when we gather to worship together on Sunday, or when we gather in our sacred temples, that's meant to be where all of the cultural and societal distinctions melt away, and what is left is our love for God and our commitment to serve Him and love each other. And so that's really where we experience, in my faith at least, where we experience that kind of togetherness, that kind of where we can be ourselves. So we don't have to be so self-conscious about our beliefs, where maybe in the world, like every religion, probably experiences a little bit of discomfort because you might believe something that people around you don't believe, or you might dress a certain way, or you might not eat certain things, but all of that kind of melts away when we gather together just to worship God in my religion.
You know, there was a progress though, because it took 10 years to figure out who's going to fix the leak. But then it took just 1 year to come up with the secret.
Right.
So that's a positive sign, and oftentimes that's not looked at it or paid enough attention to, but things are changing. It may not be fast enough, you know, but it's changing because inherently everyone is good and they want to do the right thing. My response would be very similar again. However, I just want to add something from personally, is that if I'm somewhere, obviously that the Baha'i principles or customs, if you would, are practiced, naturally I'm going to be more comfortable. But what about when I'm somewhere that is not so? And I grew up in that environment in Iran, because Baha'is are persecuted in Iran. When I was a 5-year-old and I would go ride my bicycle in front of our home, they would call me names that I cannot repeat in this environment. And that is my earliest memory of interaction with the society and as well as being identified as a Baha'i. However, where I'm not comfortable to practice it in the same scenario that because of the minority or lack of knowledge or recognition of Baha'is and their holy days, let's say, I feel personally that that's an opportunity for me for spiritual growth. Because I'm not here to satisfy others, first and foremost. It is important. But first and foremost, I'm here to grow spiritually and make sure the one who created me is pleased with me. So it's painful sometimes, but there is a sweetness to it. There is an element of detachment and a spiritual ecstasy in it when I'm not comfortable. And I can grow and let go of my lower self and become more one with the big picture.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Are we good with time for some questions? Okay.
Oh, who's she?
Say hi, Christina.
She started this whole thing.
Yes, so now we open up to some questions from our lovely students, faculty, community members, friends who are joining us on Teams, and panelists. If you have any questions for each other, you're welcome to ask them as well.
I just want to add one more element, not that we are skipping the last question you designed, and I have a feeling I'm going to speak this on behalf of all students. Is that what if I'm somewhere that I'm really persecuted, that I face injustice? What do I do then? And this is a statement I want to read from Baha'i writing. It says, consort with all the peoples, kindreds and religions of the world with the utmost truthfulness, uprightness, faithfulness, kindliness, goodwill, and friendliness, that all the world of being may be filled with the holy ecstasy of the grace of God. The ignorance, enmity, hate, and rancor may vanish from the world, and the darkness of estrangement amidst the peoples and kindreds of the world may give way to the light of unity. Should other people and nations be unfaithful to you, show your fidelity unto them. Should they be unjust toward you, show justice towards them. Should they keep aloof from you, attract them to yourselves. Should they show their enmity, be friendly towards them. Should they poison your lives, sweeten their souls. Should they inflict a wound upon you, be a slave to their sores. Such are the attributes of the sincere. Such are the attributes of the truthful. And I was inspired to share this because I think Mother Teresa is looking at me from
She visited in this very room and spoke in the 80s.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
That she wasn't whirling around.
Darn it. I have a question, if I can ask you a question. I know the fact that you're sitting here maybe speaks to this to some extent, that you're even in this room with us today, but I'm thinking about as you travel around the world, even traveling in different spaces here in Louisville locally, where you encounter people who are not believers or who do not understand anything about your traditions. How much of it do you feel is on you to educate other people? I know, rabbi means teacher, but how much do you see yourself as someone who is not necessarily proselytizing, but just educating and sharing of your faith with other people? And how much of that is just maybe a personal thing, or is it a call or a commandment of, from God in your tradition, or how do you see that how does that play out for you?
We don't proselytize at all. We believe that there are different ways to experience God, approach God. And so I have no desire to have people to convince people of the rightness of my faith. I I respect the rightness of your faith. I see God's truth and revelation as going through a prism, and also to the light. So I don't feel any need to convince someone. I can't even convince my own people. You know, I need to be more observant. So you know, I think my role is as a teacher is to teach, to present the information to people, and even when people come to want to convert, I don't encourage them to convert. I encourage them to learn, study, and see if there's anything for them. If it's the right religion for them, God bless them. And I respect people's right to be different, and so I'm glad there are a lot of different religions.
We proselytize, and I think, like Rabbi said, there's a difference between me knocking on your door and asking if you want to know more about the church, and also living next door and just being a good neighbor and being the kind of approachable person where you can feel comfortable asking me about, tell me about plural marriage, or tell me about these things that you maybe read on the internet. That surprisingly, that neighborly aspect to our religion, we as members of the church have a huge, there's an understanding gap there that we really need to work on. Not everything is this 19th century debate in the middle of the street where we're talking about right and wrong, because there's this aspect of being a member of any denomination where you want to feel like you're on the right path, but not everybody is going to join your church. So how do you reach out to other people and help them, invite them if they're curious? We believe we have a covenant obligation to invite people to learn about Jesus Christ and to follow the gospel. So you have to find a way to do that without being an insufferable jerk. And that's a skill. Not everybody has that. And so we're just patient. And most members of my faith just don't say, just quiet, because I don't know what you're getting. I don't know what I'm getting into. The chances are 100% that you're going to come across people every day that have misconceptions about my religion, that have misunderstandings for so long that they now believe that you do the craziest things and believe the craziest things. And to unwind that takes a lot of love and patience and kindness. Like the statement that you read, it was very similar to the Sermon on the Mount. That there are people who hate you for what they feel you believe that you have to love. And then you can come to a common ground where maybe they know a little bit more about your religion, but they're not putting on a white shirt and tie and going to be a missionary. They're just, I'm glad that we came to this common ground where I understand what you believe, and I love you as a person, as a child of God, even to the point where I would give my life for you if the Lord would ask that. That's where we want to be, not who has the most members attending in their congregations.
We, Baha'is, it's in their teachings, we are to share the principles that Baha'u'llah has brought as a remedy to the ailment of the human society at this age, such as independent investigation of truth, such as harmony of science and religion, such as equality of men and women, such as elimination of extremes of wealth and poverty, such as universal education. But when I share that, it's because of God, hopefully it's my belief and my understanding, and I share it. Now what you do with it, it's up to you. The matter of faith is very personal, because every human being that has been created, God has invested them with the capacity for that individual to know God and worship Him. And that pathway is unique to that soul because of the gifts that that soul has been invested in. So how they go about it is entirely up to them. I am responsible for one soul and who's sitting here, and that I have a hard time with.
You mentioned you have congregations around the world, different groups. How does the organization work in your faith that you can have similar teachings and read similar things so that when you're in different congregations around the world, it is familiar? How does that work?
Is that for all of us?
Yes.
Oh, well, I think different denominations within Judaism have special bodies that organize them. There's lay bodies, there's clergy bodies of organization, and interestingly enough, you can learn a lot about organization by which comes first, but the clergy body came first or the congregational body came first. So that kind of tells you where the power is within the movement. But yeah, there's multiple bodies. You know, Judaism is kind of like Baskin Robbins ice cream or Grader's ice cream. I mean, there's so many different flavors, and you know, and but there is still the Baskin Robbins to serve it. So I think, and sometimes the groups get together, sometimes they don't. So, for example, the far right in Judaism does not accept women clergy, so they will not meet with women clergy. I mean, everyone's got their, what we call Yiddish mishigas, craziness. But you know, there are overarching bodies. So, good example, I'm part of the conservative movement, conservative Judaism. There is a seminary. There's actually multiple seminaries. There's 5 seminaries across the world. 2 in the United States, 1 in Israel, 1 in Budapest, and 1 in Argentina. There is one international rabbinic body for rabbis, and there are a few different organizations that oversee the synagogues in different countries that are conservative. The Reform movement has a parallel thing. Orthodoxy is very, very complicated. I mean, some of it revolves around individuals, like a rabbi or a community. There is one overarching body for them that is for the modern Orthodox. Then you've got Hasidic who don't want anything to do with the modern Orthodox, and they all think I'm Catholic for the most part. It's what one person, defining the different movements as lazy, hazy, and crazy. My guess is that's probably true of all religions. They've got their lazy, they got their hazy, and they got their crazy. I'm hazy.
So, as a bishop, if I receive instructions from what we would call the prophet and his counselors, they have instructions for bishops, all the bishops around the world. There's like 30. We're opening the same letter, just in whatever language. If the Sunday school curriculum for next year is the Old Testament, if we're going to go with the ice cream thing, it's vanilla. The box can be vanilla, wherever you are in the whole world. It's going to be the Old Testament for everybody, and the entire every member of the church across the globe.
You can add sprinkles.
We could add. Yes. Sometimes you'll sit in Sunday school and wonder, is it? So yes, we have that easy, lazy, crazy aspect of our religion as well, and it makes it fun. But yeah, so it's very what is the right word? Overseen. So.
I think the sprinkles are the love that they add to it when they deliver it. Baha'u'llah has made it very easy for Baha'is in a way. In every locality, when the number of Baha'is reaches 9 and goes over, annually there is an election held. And this election is with secret ballots. No one is allowed to nominate themselves or another, and no one is allowed to talk about it, about whom to vote for, whom not to vote for, including their own self, because it's a spiritual exercise. That you, in the privacy of your own chamber, you sit down and pray and think of the 9 people who can best serve the needs of the community, the local community. that becomes the local spiritual assembly of that city. Every year, the Baha'is in various regions, let's say United States, send a representative to a national convention. Now that representative is elected by that region, again in the same process of secret ballots, no electioneering of any kind. Those representatives elect 9 Baha'is among the Baha'is in that country. They become the national spiritual assembly of that country. And they take care of the national level matters. Let's say for the United States, if the Congress is to be communicated because of some dynamic, it falls in their jurisdiction. But in Louisville, if the Baha'i community wants to communicate with the council or the mayor, the local assembly takes care of it. Then, so there is a decentralization, even though yet there is an organization. Then every 5 years, all the national spiritual assemblies in the world, all these 9s, and every country has one, they get together in Holy Land for an international convention. They vote for 9 among the Baha'is of the world, not just the people who are represented there. That 9 becomes what we call the council as Universal House of Justice. And that is the highest administrative authority of Baha'is in the world. Now, when it comes to my personal belief, my practices, that daily obligatory prayer I mentioned that I need to face Holy Land to recite it, those are between me and my God. No one is allowed to ask me. As far as the spiritual practices, this takes care of the administrative needs of the international community. For example, if you are to secure a burial ground for some Baha'is who pass away, so the local spiritual assembly does it. Communication with US Congress, National Spiritual Assembly does it. If it comes to dealings with the governments of the world, or let's say United Nations for the sake of example, then the Universal House of Justice takes care of that. Now, if there is a dispute between you and me as 2 Baha'is about some silly thing, and usually it's about ego, what happens is that we go to our local assembly, we seek for guidance. They say, okay, you two, you gotta be nice to each other, we don't like it. We can take it to the National Spiritual Assembly. They turn around and say something else, that we need to go eat dinner together more often so we become more friends. We don't like it. We can take that to the Universal House of Justice. And then their decision within the Baha'i system, and it's not about the spiritual matter, it's about the practical stuff that's administrative and well-being and the care of the community. Their decision is final. But they do not interfere with my personal practices and spiritual beliefs.
Amazing. Beautiful.
Yeah, my situation is even simpler, for better and for worse. I'm the final authority.
Well,
my religion,
I need your address.
no appeal. The Supreme Court, I mean, there is a board of trustees, and they determine the ethics and policies, but among religious issues, obviously, I've made almost 41 years, so I'm good at getting this feedback, but ultimately determining which ones, and it all falls on me. There's no appeal, and for better and for worse. I mean, there are advantages to having public. There really are. I mean, there's a final, the buck stops with the vote. Unfortunately, and fortunately, the buck stops with me. So there's no one obviously I can talk to colleagues and scholars, but ultimately the feeling is the person on the ground has the best information for understanding the unique situation. Because Louisville Judaism is very different than Cleveland Judaism, New York Judaism, Beverly Hills Judaism, Philadelphia Judaism, and so it falls on me.
I just add the thing I explained is in the context that in Baha'i faith there is no clergy. no one person has any special role. I am here today, for example, because of their kindness to tolerate me today. However, it's more really the essence of the faith. I can verbalize it in my own limited way. But the matters are consulted by those spiritual assemblies, and the majority vote. God, it said that unanimously they should come to a decision. God forbid, if it's not unanimous, then the majority rules. But the goal is that love and unity, and at no times, nothing should compromise that love and unity, because then we destroy the very foundation of the faith of God.
Thank you. That's a great answer. I believe we are about out of time, so thank you all, everyone who was here who attended today. Thank you to our wonderful panelists, the folks who asked questions, everyone who joined us on Teams. Thank you all for making this a wonderful dialogue.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank
you, Rachel.
Abby.
Very nice,
Okay.
beautiful. Oh,
Sorry, Brett, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
thank you. Oh,
Thank you so much.
I know. That's really big. It's really, it's been so important than